This is Yuki. She is a vampire and has lived for over 700 years. She thinks that many people would consider immortality a blessing, but for her, it is not entirely so. It is true that she has had joyful moments, but living for too long has also forced her to face the gradual departure of memories and the people she once knew. However, she has continued to live, and now she is a teacher. Today, her students plan to play a prank on her. They then jump down from the trees to attack her, but she had a barrier ready to block their strike and then sent them flying into the lake with a punch. It seems this was not the first time these students had attempted to attack Yuki, as many noticed that, despite so much time passing, they still had not learned their lesson. The reason these students tried to attack Yuki was that she had declared that if anyone could touch her, she would allow that person to leave the village and study in the capital. However, with such half-baked techniques, it was still far too early for them to defeat her. She believed that they should not simply think that reaching the capital would change their lives, because if it were that easy, the village chief would not have arranged for her to be an obstacle for them. Especially Tauda, she considered him the most arrogant with his amateurish swordsmanship. But Tauda's group argued that Yuki had used magic that they had not yet learned. The whole class then pushed the desks aside, and Yuki stepped forward, blowing them all away because they refused to recognize their own shortcomings and instead argued against her. The other teachers at the school also felt that Yuki was being a bit too strict with the children. They understood that she was Tauda's guardian, which was why she took such meticulous care of him, but sometimes she should be a little more lenient. Meanwhile, Tauda's group still believed that Yuki was being unfair by using magic. Although magic had become widespread 10 years ago, very few people could actually use it, which was why a tool called a magic device was created. These devices were extremely expensive, so Tauda's group still decided to train the old-fashioned way, aiming for the day they could reach the capital and set foot in the tower known as the orbital elevator. The group was about to go train when Tauda asked for permission to leave first. His friends then remembered that today was an important day for him. He went to visit his parents' grave. Tauda's parents had passed away in an accident a few years ago, and he had lost his memories. Yuki happened to pass by the accident scene and was able to rescue Tauda in time, which led her to become his guardian. Although the two often clashed at home, they were very close. Suddenly, Tauda noticed the silhouette of someone who always came to see him whenever he visited the grave. That figure told him that they were waiting for him at the top of the orbital elevator. That night, Tauda cooked dinner for Yuki, and she remarked that if his studies were as good as his cooking, it would be great. Afterward, he went back to training, and the next day, his entire group got beaten up by Yuki once again. They realized that there was no way they could defeat Yuki without knowing magic. Thus, teacher Takabana offered to help them learn magic. He gave the group magic devices, but only his friends could use them, while Tauda seemed to have no affinity for magic at all. So, the teacher gave him a bracelet. That night, Tauda examined it, not knowing what it was, when Yuki noticed. He told her that it was a gift he wanted to give to her, and then handed it to her. The next day, Yuki wore the bracelet on her wrist, only to be suddenly ambushed by Tauda's group and bound by magic. At that moment, Tauda was running to join his friends, but as soon as they had restrained Yuki, the teacher turned on them and knocked them all out. Takabana then used magic to attack Yuki, and she was unable to resist because the bracelet had sealed her magic. It turned out that Takabana had been posing as a teacher for the past 6 months just to find an opportunity to capture Yuki, as she had a bounty of 600 million on her head. Takabana did not want to waste time with a vampire like Yuki, so he intended to finish her off immediately. But Tauda rushed in to stop him, only to be swiftly sent flying. Takabana then charged forward and severed one of Tauda's arms. Yuki then had to step in to shield him and declared that he and his friends had passed. This was also the first time she had ever received a gift from Tauda, so she was happy. However, Takabana did not give them the chance to talk and instead proceeded to strike Yuki down. He also stabbed Tauda once to finish him off. stating that this was just a job and that there was no personal grudge. However, Yuki called out to Tauta, waking him up, and revealed that when she saved him, she had turned him into a half-vampire. Now, he had two choices. 1. To die as a human, or 2. To become an immortal monster if he drank her blood. He had to decide quickly because his friends were about to be attacked by Takebana. Tauta then chose to drink Yuki's blood, and just as Takebana was about to strike, he returned to face him. However, Takebana used magic to blow him away, saying that no matter what he was still just a kid and couldn't scare him. But Tauta quickly regenerated his arm and landed a punch that sent Takebana flying dozens of meters. Afterward, Tauta lost consciousness and met Yuki again. He was surprised that Yuki was unharmed, and she explained that she was a vampire and that he was now immortal. Tauta was fine with this, but Yuki warned him that once he experienced the darker side of immortality, he would understand that it was not a good thing. Still, Tauta felt that as long as Yuki was with him, things wouldn't be so bad, since she was the only family he had. The next day, Tauta and Yuki said goodbye to their friends to head to the capital, fearing that staying there would only bring more danger. Their friends promised to catch up soon and meet him at the orbital elevator. Yuki then asked Tauta if he had any plans for when he reached the top of the tower, but he simply believed that something exciting awaited him there and that he would become famous for climbing it. They then took a deserted road, and Tauta wondered why they weren't using public transportation. Yuki explained that they were now targets for bounty hunters, so taking public transport would likely result in a massacre. Tauta wanted to reach the capital soon and make more friends, but during a rest stop, Yuki reminded him that being immortal meant he would be stuck in a 14-year-old body forever, so he should be careful when forming relationships. He then went to bathe at a nearby waterfall and realized that Yuki's warning was true. There, he unexpectedly encountered another person bathing, who immediately swung a sword at him. Tauta dodged in time and realized that the person was a boy. He was then hit by a punch, and suddenly, the two ended up introducing themselves. The boy was Kiro, who was surprised to meet someone who could evade his sword strike for the first time. The two sat down and talked, and Kiro revealed that he came from the top of the tower and was from a wealthy family. However, he had been exiled from his home until he could find a 7,000-year-old vampire. Suddenly, Yuki arrived, and Kiro immediately drew his sword to attack. Yuki quickly recognized Kiro's identity, and he, in turn, realized that Tauta was a vampire. Kiro then introduced himself as a member of the Immortal Hunters Guild. Yuki swiftly stabbed Kiro through the body, causing Tauta to become furious, thinking she had just killed someone. However, Yuki told him to take another look, as it seemed that Kiro also had an immortal body. Tauta then had to use various methods to wake Kiro up. It turned out that Kiro had been disowned by his family because of his immortality, and unless he could defeat Yuki, he would never be able to return to his clan with his immortal body. Yuki agreed to fight Kiro, but only if he could first defeat Tauta, her disciple. Tauta didn't understand why he was being dragged into this, but Kiro immediately launched an attack. Seeing Kiro's determination, Tauta accepted the challenge but wanted to set a condition. The winner could make a demand of the loser. After getting Kiro's agreement, Kiro took out a sword for a fair fight. However, Tauta threw the sword away and charged in barehanded. Tauta quickly landed a kick on Kiro's face and then unleashed rapid punches to nullify Kiro's range advantage. However, Kiro skillfully slashed Tauta's back and then swiftly struck his neck. One would have thought that this would stop Tauta, but he instantly reattached his head, regenerated, and delivered an immensely powerful blow that left Kiro flattened on the ground. Kiro lost and had to obey Tauta's request, becoming his friend. The group then arrived in the city and went to a hot spring. Tauta told Kiro not to be shy anymore since they were now officially friends, with a proper agreement after Kiro's defeat, so he couldn't deny it. The two then bathed together, but Tauta still wasn't sure whether Kiro was a boy or a girl. He also wondered why Kiro's family seemed so strict. In reality, the main reason was that Kuro was discriminated against due to his immortal body, and the mission to eliminate Yuki was merely an excuse to drive him out of the house. Tauta believed that Kuro no longer had a reason to return there, so he suggested that Kuro just travel with him and Yuki. However, Kuro still didn't completely see Tauta as a friend, so Tauta invited him to peek at Yuki. In truth, Tauta wasn't particularly interested in peeking at Yuki, as they had lived together for years. The real issue was that he just wanted to do something together with Kuro. Climbing up first, he saw a little girl there, but she then transformed into Yuki, who revealed that her previous form was actually her true appearance. Yuki decided to test Tauta a little, saying that if he could pull off her towel, she would grant him one request. However, he was somewhat disappointed, as Yuki was completely flat, so she threw a pile of ice at him. She then decided to show him some ancient magic, unleashing an ice storm. Kuro rushed in to shield Tauta, only to remember too late that Tauta was immortal and didn't need saving. But Tauta asked Kuro to throw him upward, allowing him to shoot up and successfully grab Yuki's towel, earning her recognition. However, he still claimed he wasn't interested, so Yuki dunked him into the water. Kuro laughed, and for the first time, Tauta saw him smile. Kuro then agreed to travel with them, and Yuki asked if he wanted to become her apprentice, to which he agreed. At this moment, they became curious about Kuro's towel wrapping style. The group then set off again, with Kuro believing he had finally found a place where he belonged. Tauta then thought about gathering more immortals and forming a team to protect the world. Just then, a convoy suddenly arrived to pick up Yuki. A girl named Karen asked who Tauta was, stating that if he was an outsider, he needed to be eliminated. However, Yuki informed her that Tauta was also an immortal. She also admitted that Tauta's idea was good, but unfortunately, she had already established an organization for immortals a long time ago. Upholder. Aboard the ship, Kuro wondered what kind of organization Yuki had created, while Karen couldn't understand how Yuki had managed to take care of Tauta for 2 years. Yuki simply stated that among all the immortals she had met, Karen and Tauta possessed the strongest immortality. Because of that, she was certain that if humanity were ever to face extinction, Karen and Tauta would likely be the last 2 survivors on Earth. However, Karen still visibly disliked Tauta. They then arrived at Upholder's headquarters, an island located 10 kilometers from the mainland, which also operated as a hot spring resort. The organization's members gathered around Yuki to welcome her back after 2 years. Tauta was curious about how many vampires were among the immortals here and learned that there were very few. Some members then explained to Tauta that there were many different types of immortality. Some were granted by magic, some by genetics, some by the Philosopher's Stone, and some by mechanical augmentation. More uniquely, some people even possessed multiple lives, as if in a video game. 2 members then apologized and introduced themselves as Goro, member No. 6 of the organization, and Ikkyu, member No. 10. Goro explained that for Tauta and Kuro to officially join, they had to pass a test. Normally, the test involved investigating magical beasts beneath the organization, but they decided to change the rules. Instead, the 2 would pass as long as they managed to land at least 1 hit on them before the weekend. They could use weapons or not, attack directly or ambush, anything was allowed. Kuro realized that if they were willing to give such a huge handicap, they must be incredibly strong. Goro then announced that he would be Kuro's opponent. Tauta was assigned to Ikkyu, but Karen stepped in and took responsibility for facing him. Tauta immediately charged forward, but was instantly slammed to the ground by Karen. Yuki taught him that in battle, he must not hold back just because his opponent was a girl. Meanwhile, Kuro also quickly joined his own fight. The next day, Tauta shared with Kuro that he had tried to ambush Karen multiple times but kept failing. As expected, Karen was still overwhelmingly strong. Kuro also admitted that Goro was just as formidable, as during their fight, Goro had evaded every attack simply by relying on his experience and instincts. They still had until the end of the week, but if they didn't improve, they would never land a hit on either of their opponents. Unexpectedly, they encountered a maid who tripped while passing by, so they helped her dispose of the trash. The girl introduced herself as Shinobu, an ordinary person working at the inn. She came from the countryside and had been transferred here for certain reasons. Tauta told her to let him know if she ever needed help in the future. Kuro reminded him about their test, but he said they would think about it later since overthinking it now wouldn't help. They then asked if Shinobu needed any more help, and she mentioned that she still had to transport some goods to storage. Meanwhile, Yuki recalled the time she had once issued this very same challenge to land a single hit to Tauta's grandfather. This was shown at the beginning of the movie, so viewers could check it out if they were interested. Back to Tauta and Kuro, they wandered around without knowing where the storage was. Suddenly, Tauta heard a voice guiding him. Following it, he entered the place that looked most like a storage area. However, once inside, Kuro realized that it didn't resemble a storage room at all. They kept going deeper and soon confirmed that this was indeed not the storage area. However, since they found a massive structure inside, they decided to explore. There, they discovered a sword and a man. He introduced himself as Jinbei, the No.2 of the organization. Seeing that he was second only to Yuki, they assumed he must be incredibly strong, but his drunken appearance made them doubt him. Jinbei then asked who among them was Tauta and told him to try pulling out the sword. If he could do it, Jinbei would let him keep it. The sword had been forged by a great mage, but since very few people could wield it, it had been left there untouched. Tauta wasn't particularly fond of swords as they felt cumbersome, but the idea of carrying one at his waist seemed interesting, so he gave it a try. It was difficult to pull out. Suddenly, the same voice from earlier told him to turn the knob on the sword and try again. Doing so, he was able to pull it out completely. The voice belonged to the sword itself, which introduced itself as Noburo. Jinbei told Noburo to stop babbling, but the sword had grown tired of staying in one place and wanted to find a wielder to travel with. Jinbei then took the sword and explained that it had a knob that could adjust its weight. He set it to 1 ton and tossed it to Tauta, who immediately had his hand cut off by it. Jinbei then raised the weight to 50 tons and swung it to demonstrate the benefits of increasing its mass. However, he warned that mastering Noburo would be an arduous journey. Tauta vowed not to disappoint him. Jinbei instructed them to train here from now on to avoid causing trouble outside. In the following days, Tauta and Kuro trained in the cave while also frequently helping Shinobu with her tasks. Jinbei requested Yuki to let him train the 2 kids, while Yuki was simply interested in seeing if they could pass the test. After 7 days of training, both were now ready to return to the challenge. Kuro went to face Goro, while Tauta confronted Karin. Karin noticed that Tauta had abandoned his ambush tactics since they were ineffective. He asked her whether she would scar if he managed to cut her, but she assured him that she wouldn't, so he should go all out. Tauta immediately leaped down to engage her in battle. Even after increasing the sword's weight, he still wasn't able to surprise Karin. Meanwhile, Kuro was still being overwhelmed by Goro. Goro noted that while Kuro had excellent footwork, his swordsmanship was lacking. At that moment, Kuro thought about what Tauta might do in this situation. He then deliberately let his hand get severed and controlled his detached arm to stab Goro from behind. He then collapsed and revived again, just like in a game mechanic, revealing that he still had more than 250 lives left. It had been a long time since Goro last lost a life, and he acknowledged that Kuro had passed. Meanwhile, Shinobu was suddenly spotted by a monster, while Tauta was still holding his ground against Karin. He had learned to continuously adjust the sword's weight to suit his attacks, finally managing to create an opening in Karin's defense by sweeping her legs, causing her to fall. He immediately lunged forward to strike, but before he could land the blow, Shinobu's scream forced him to rush to her aid. He discovered that more monsters were swarming in, prompting Karin to decide to lure them away so he could rescue Shinobu. However, one monster remained, so Tauta had to deal with it. He successfully brought Shinobu to safety, and soon after, the others arrived. But Tauta had set his sword to 50 tons and jumped straight into the horde, instantly vaporizing them. Yuki then arrived to assess the situation and noted that Tauta had still not passed the test. However, Karin refused to give him any more chances, though she conceded that he had at least managed to damage her uniform. Yuki suspected that someone had drilled a hole underground, allowing the monsters to emerge. As a result, Kuro and Tauta were tasked with eliminating them all. As for Jinbei, he was found guilty of secretly drinking Yuki's alcohol, so he was also thrown into the underground area. The three of them had to deal with all the monsters themselves before they could return to the surface. The next day, Tauta told Shinobu that he was about to embark on another mission assigned by Yuki. Both he and Kuro were to accompany Karin on the upcoming mission as support. Tauta imagined that he would be traveling in a luxurious vehicle and promised to bring back souvenirs for Shinobu. But once the journey began, he realized that he had to run on foot. Their destination was the capital, where invaders had appeared. Karin explained that the world had always struggled with wealth disparity, and this place was no different. The slums were considered dangerous and unlawful, leading to their isolation from the rest of society. The wealthy wanted the poor to disappear completely. Without hesitation, Tauta immediately jumped down and struck the rich people, only to be told by a nun that they were also members of Upholder. Karin had to exclaim that Tauta truly was an idiot. The group then had to entertain the children in the area, with Tauta even cooking food, earning praise from the nun that his cooking was better than some super chef named Soma. Karin remarked that if cooking was the only thing Tauta was good at, he might as well consider becoming a chef. She then proposed an arm wrestling match to determine who would be responsible for daily cooking, knowing full well that Tauta always lost. Later, Karin took them to see an overview of the slums, which were continuously expanding, now housing up to 2 million people. Every night, people came to forcibly remove them, which was why they sought Upholder's protection. Tauta then went to train, attempting to practice rapid movement, but was caught by a man who immediately kicked him for doing it wrong. This man was a wandering martial artist who offered to teach him the proper technique for rapid movement. However, Tauta was actually training to win at arm wrestling, so the man agreed to help with that too. He first demonstrated rapid movement and even drew diagrams, explaining that mastering leg control would also greatly benefit arm wrestling. He introduced himself as Kaido and claimed that mastering footwork meant mastering the world itself. He then leaped into the air using the wind as footing, which fascinated Tauta. Kaido considered taking Tauta as a disciple if he could learn his tricks. That night, Tauta attempted to cook using only his feet, which was far more difficult than usual, but he persisted, even eating with his feet. The next day, he had improved in swift movement, but had yet to perfect it, as Kaido wanted him to be as proficient with his feet as with his hands. Tauta continued to do everything using his feet and resumed his training with Kaido. He also befriended a boy named Ruki, who seemed interested in learning to use his feet like Tauta. During one of their training sessions, Kaido shared the struggles he had faced during his own training, lamenting that the worst part was being treated like a lunatic by others. Tauta continued to train in foot techniques while Kaido returned to meet his two other teammates. It was revealed that this group specialized in hunting down immortals, and Kaido himself was a werewolf. Though he continued to train Tauta, he did not teach him everything. Meanwhile, Tauta and Ruki went to deliver meals to some members of their organization, but as soon as they left, those two members were attacked by assassins in cloaks. At the same time, Karin was bathing when a one-eyed man in black suddenly appeared right next to her, forcing her to use a magical barrier to block his attack. She managed to seize his gun and demanded that he step aside, but he still wanted to play around with her for a bit. He then slashed her repeatedly, but she retaliated by punching him out of the bath and lunging at him, threatening to kill him. However, he quickly pulled out a gun and shot into her mouth, forcing her to let go. He introduced himself as Xingzi, a member of a mercenary squad. Meanwhile, Tauta and Ruki were out collecting scrap metal when Ruki revealed that he wanted to earn money to go to college and eventually become a businessman to change the slums. Suddenly, they noticed several fires breaking out in the area. Tauta immediately rushed off, but Ruki was targeted, forcing Tauta to run back and save him. Meanwhile, Kuro took care of the other attackers, explaining that they were puppets controlled remotely by someone else. They had to call the organization for reinforcements and evacuate the civilians. Tauta told Ruki to run ahead, but he was then ambushed by Kaido, who stabbed him multiple times before launching a powerful strike that sent him flying out of the battle. Meanwhile, the blind swordsman wanted to fight Kuro. Karin, on the other hand, realized that Xingzi was a shadow manipulator. He used his shadows to bind her and continued toying with her. Kuro now had to face two enemies alone and was completely overwhelmed by Kaido's speed. Although he lost an arm, he managed to land a counterattack. However, Kaido soon figured out what kind of regeneration Kuro had. It was the kind that could still be overcome if the damage exceeded his healing speed. As Kuro prepared to defend, Kaido suddenly appeared behind him and sliced his body in half. Tauta's group was now in complete despair, unable to see any way to turn the situation around. Kuro was sent flying towards Tauta, who realized that he had to find a way to undo the seal. But at that moment, Ruki unexpectedly stepped forward, determined to protect Kuro and Tauta. Meanwhile, Xingzi had learned that Karin was an immortal girl who had once lived in a European village. Back then, she had been hunted by the witch hunt organization, which had attempted to destroy her but failed. One day, she vanished without a trace. After hearing her story, Xingzi had searched for her for a long time. Her regeneration prevented her from bleeding, but she could still feel pain, a cruel reality. He didn't understand why she was now helping the poor after being tormented by humanity. As for Ruki, he was completely powerless against Kaido. He asked why they were doing this, and the blind man explained that their employer wanted to reclaim this land, as it did not belong to the poor. It was revealed that the tower connected directly to Mars, and their clients over there wanted to ensure their property remained untouched. That was why they had hired mercenaries to clear the area. Just as Ruki was about to be killed, Kuro lunged forward to protect him, but both were ultimately saved by Tauta. At the same time, Karin kicked Xingzi in the groin. Since she possessed Holy Light, a power granted by God, she was able to break free from his shadow magic. She then proceeded to beat him up, calling him the most disgusting pervert she had ever met. The blind man was confused about how Tauta had broken free from Kaido's spell and where he had gotten those gloves on his hands. Tauta himself was unsure, but what mattered more was that these people had hurt his friends, so he had to pay them back. He then punched both of them away, which greatly excited Kaido. He admitted that he took on dirty jobs like this just to have the chance to fight people like Tauta. Tauta then asked Kuro how long he needed to recover, and since he still required a significant amount of time, Tauta decided to take both opponents on himself. However, Karin arrived to provide support, allowing Tauta to confidently expose Kaido. He pointed out that very few people possessed the same movement techniques as Kaido, and he could not accept that someone he respected was engaging in such a repulsive line of work. But for Kaido, as long as he could fight, nothing else mattered. The two then clashed, and Kaido was shocked that Tauta had already caught up to his speed. They exchanged blow after blow, and Kaido eventually resorted to his trump card. He lunged forward with a lightning-fast strike and crushed Tauta's heart. However, he was stunned when Tauta suddenly sprouted black wings and regenerated his heart. The blind man realized that this was the ultimate dark magic, which granted the user immortality and unimaginable power, at the cost of their soul being eroded. He had only ever known of two people who wielded this magic. The first was Yuki, and the second was an individual he and Yuki had faced on Mars 25 years ago. That person had been extremely cruel, and he could not allow a third user to emerge. But before he could act, Tauta sent Kaido flying. Tauta continuously converted his negative emotions into strength, But Karen warned the blind man not to interfere, stating that if Tauta lost control, their organization would take responsibility. Meanwhile, Kaido had been defeated and was ready to die, but Tauta regained his sanity and hesitated to finish him off. Tauta berated Kaido, telling him not to lie there waiting for death like a pathetic loser, but instead get up and try to defeat him. Kaido then realized that Tauta had sealed away his power. However, because it was the dark magic that made him immortal, he was now unable to heal. In contrast, Kaido's werewolf regeneration allowed him to gradually recover. Still, he admitted defeat and urged Tauta to accept the dark magic as part of his strength. Wanting to win decisively, he proposed an arm wrestling match, and Tauta accepted the challenge. The blind man was astonished that Tauta could suppress the dark magic. Kaido then taught Tauta his second secret technique, always believing that he stood at the peak of the world. He flipped a coin into the air and immediately slammed Tauta's arm down, but Tauta held his ground. Tauta questioned if Kaido really had the strength to willingly die in such a miserable place. Kaido accepted it, saying that this was a world ruled by money, and the poor had no right to complain. However, Tauta showed him a different perspective, then slammed him straight from the rooftop down to the ground. Acknowledging his total defeat, Kaido wished for death, but Tauta refused to grant him that. Shortly after, the blind man decided to withdraw. At that moment, Yuki arrived and extinguished the flames with her ice magic. She was surprised to see the blind man there, and he created a spatial rift with his sword, taking Kaido with him as he left. That night, the slum residents held a celebration for having survived the ordeal. Meanwhile, Tauta wondered about the dark magic within him, and Yuki explained that since he had drunk her blood, it was only natural that he possessed her power. At that moment, a mysterious figure was observing from afar and recognized Tauta. Upon returning, Noburo complained to Kuro about not being brought along for the mission. Kuro then asked if Noburo knew anything about Tauta's dark magic, but Noburo only had limited knowledge. Kuro found it hard to believe that Tauta had simply inherited it from Yuki, as acquiring magic of nearly supreme level power through mere inheritance seemed too convenient. He began to worry that something terrible was about to happen to Tauta. Noburo joked that Kuro had feelings for Tauta, as he was still unsure whether Kuro was male or female. Flustered, Kuro slammed Noburo into the ground and ran off, despite Noburo only teasing him. Meanwhile, Tauta was happily riding a hovercraft over the ocean with Shinobu. She explained that she had stumbled upon it in a junkyard, restored it, and luckily managed to get it working. Shinobu revealed her dream of building a machine and competing in the Solar Race, an annual competition. Tauta decided to support her, even though she had not yet considered the possibility of participating. Watching the two enjoy themselves, Kuro felt a sharp pain in his chest without knowing why. Upon returning to his room, Karen was shocked to discover that Kuro was actually a girl, and she couldn't allow a boy and a girl like Kuro and Tauta to share a room. However, Kuro had to explain that they were a demi-human and had no gender at birth. Only upon reaching their 16th birthday could they choose their gender. Karen advised Kuro to choose to be female if they wanted to stay by Tauta's side. She then attacked Kuro while simultaneously giving advice. Her goal was to keep Kuro close to Tauta so that he wouldn't get any closer to Yuki. At the same time, she believed that Kuro truly liked Tauta, but simply hadn't admitted it yet. Ikkyu then appeared and told Karen not to pressure Kuro like that, but she insisted that she was merely offering advice. Ikkyu then came up with a solution. Kuro would disguise themselves as a girl and go on a date with Tauta under a different identity to better understand their feelings for him and help decide their gender. Kuro then changed their hair to blonde and went to meet Tauta, introducing themselves as their own cousin and asking Tauta to give them a tour of the capital. Since Tauta hadn't been there for long, he saw this as an opportunity to explore. Karen was confident that an idiot like Tauta wouldn't recognize Kuro. She then asked Ikkyu for a favor, as she had originally intended to ask Kuro, but since Kuro was busy, Ikkyu had to go instead. Meanwhile, Kuro and Tauta borrowed Shinobu's vehicle, and Tauta was curious about a girl sitting in the back. Shinobu only knew that she came from the tower. The two then set off for the mainland, leaving Noburo behind. Tauta and Kuro had a fun day together, and Tauta genuinely made Kuro's heart race with joy. At one point, Kuro tripped, and Tauta helped fix their shoe. Kuro then expressed a desire to visit the tower, so they headed there together. However, Xingzi, the shadow manipulator from before, spotted them. Meanwhile, Yuki was worried about Tauta. She realized that his dark magic had been there from the beginning, not something inherited from her, and she feared that he would take an interest in Tauta. The one she referred to was Fate, the white-haired man who had been observing Tauta earlier. Upon hearing that Tauta was in the capital, he immediately set off. At that moment, Tauta and Kuro reached the observation deck of the tower to admire the view. Kuro, still uncertain about how Tauta viewed them in daily life, asked him directly. Tauta said that he always considered Kuro a precious friend, which made Kuro think that as long as they remained male, they could still stay by Tauta's side. However, Kuro then asked what Tauta thought of them as a girl. Tauta found Kuro cute, which only deepened their internal dilemma. At that moment, Xingzi appeared to attack, but was swiftly knocked away by Tauta. He then used his shadows to bind Tauta, forcing Kuro to intervene, but Kuro was quickly intercepted by a swordsman. The swordsman swiftly overpowered Kuro and urged Xingzi to take Tauta away. Kuro, unfamiliar with their female body, struggled to utilize their full strength. However, they soon fought back, revealing their immortality, prompting the swordsman to launch them off the tower. He struck Kuro down once more and prepared to take them along with Tauta, but Kuro finally resolved their feelings, broke free from their restraints, and sent Xingzi flying with a punch. Reverting to their original form, Kuro forced the swordsman to retreat and demanded Tauta's return. When Tauta regained consciousness, he was surprised to see Kuro there. Kuro had to lie, claiming they had been inside the tower by chance and managed to get their sister to safety. Ultimately, Kuro decided to stay by Tauta's side regardless of their gender. However, Tauta admitted that Kuro's sister was quite pretty and gentle, the ideal type of girl he would marry, forcing Kuro to reconsider their gender choice even further. As they left, they reunited with Ikkyu and Kan. Karin pulled Kuro aside for a private conversation, while Ikkyu introduced the girl Tauta had met earlier, Kiri. Unexpectedly, Kiri requested to speak privately with Tauta. She led him aside and ordered him to kneel, then declared that she would kick him in the face for failing to protect her 6 times. Immediately after, Kiri was suddenly assassinated, and Tauta realized that the attacker was Xingzi. The girl asked Tauta to hold her hand, then transported him back to their base, but at an earlier time, specifically in the early morning when he and Kuro had just left for their outing. Tauta encountered Karin and Ikkyu again, and Karin was confused as to why Tauta was there, as it seemed Kiri hadn't revealed much about her abilities to others. While on the boat, Kiri explained that the sand dune she had created beneath the tree was a revival point, which would remain active as long as the fire continued burning. Whenever she died, she would resurrect at that point and could bring others with her by touching them. However, in the previous 6 resets, Tauta had let go of her hand to chase after Xingzi, so this was the first time he had successfully returned with her. The group then went to meet Kuro again, just as they had in the previous loops, and once again split up. Kiri revealed that she needed to reach the top of the orbital elevator for a meeting. Upon hearing this, Tauta became excited and hoped to accompany her, just as he had said during their first meeting. Just then, Xingzi appeared, only to be sent flying by Tauta. Xingzi attempted to merge into the shadows and launch another attack from a different angle, but Tauta, having brought Noburo along, was able to counter him. He increased the weight of his sword and struck Xingzi down in a single blow. Kiri then revealed that the world's strongest mage, Fate, was now hunting Tauta. In the first loop she had reset, she and Kuro had separated from Tauta and the others, and during that time, she discovered that Fate had come all the way to the tower in search of Tauta. Despite Ikkyu's attempt to attack Fate, he was instantly obliterated. Karin was sucked into the void, Tauda was decapitated, and Kuro, who rushed in, was also swiftly taken down. Kiri herself was turned to stone. Fate claimed that he was Tauda's true master and had come to reclaim him. Kiri knew that if she remained petrified, she wouldn't be able to reset, so she had no choice but to use a knife to end her own life and trigger a reset. Tauda was still overwhelmed by all the new information, but he was puzzled about who exactly Fate was. According to Kiri, Fate was once a hero, but had now become humanity's enemy. As for why Fate considered himself Tauda's master, Kiri had no answer. By this point, Ikkyu and Karin had also learned about Kiri's ability, but they chose not to pry further, as an immortal's secrets were also their greatest weaknesses. Among all immortals, Kiri's form of immortality was the most vulnerable. If she were betrayed, the consequences would be severe. The group promised never to betray Kiri, reassuring her that she had nothing to worry about. Kiri then revealed the plan she had devised with Yuki. Since they now knew when Fate would appear, they would set a trap to capture him. The group returned to the tower, with Tauda staying in place to lure Fate in. Karin and Ikkyu would fight to distract him, while Kuro and Kiri only needed to touch Fate, allowing Kiri to transport him to a revival point stored in a cave beneath their base. However, Ikkyu insisted on returning together with the group. With the plan finalized, everyone dispersed to their respective positions. Ikkyu remotely controlled a satellite, aiming it at the tower in preparation. They also wondered why Yuki wasn't participating, but Kiri explained that Fate could sense Yuki's presence, so he wouldn't act recklessly if she were around. At that moment, Tauda was bumped into by a stranger who left a mysterious mark on him. Meanwhile, Tauda sought to learn more about Fate and found that Yuki had already prepared information for him. 80 years ago, Fate had played a crucial role in resolving a crisis on Mars and had saved the entire world. At the time, Tauda's grandfather had been on Mars alongside him. Both of them were heroes. Not long after, Yuki had joined them. However, after Tauda's grandfather passed away, Fate changed and became humanity's enemy. He was now pursuing Tauda because of his past connection to the grandfather, meaning Tauda must not listen to his words. As Tauda contemplated Fate's motives, the others reported that Fate had arrived. Upon seeing him, Tauda immediately told Ikkyu to hold fire, as his friends were also present and walking behind Fate. Realizing that Fate had already spotted him, Tauda chose not to retreat and instead faced him directly. Two of his friends recognized him and rushed over to greet him, explaining that an acquaintance of theirs had recently opened a shop in the area, which was why they had come to visit. Just then, Ikkyu was suddenly restrained by a maid, preventing him from taking action. Fate then appeared before Tauda, initially acting friendly, but making it clear that Tauda's two friends were being held hostage. Tauda, without bothering to play along, confronted him directly. Fate attempted to persuade him to join his side, arguing that Yuki was incapable of helping Tauda grow and was ultimately useless. However, Tauda decided to oppose him, refusing to believe Fate's words about Yuki. Fate warned him to act wisely, as he could wipe out everyone present in an instant. In response, Tauda suddenly shouted that Fate was a terrorist, causing the surrounding civilians to flee. Karin quickly sprang into action, dodging Fate's attack and kicking Tauda's two friends away from his grasp. She and Tauda then launched simultaneous attacks, but Fate blocked them effortlessly. Tauda increased the weight of his sword to break through Fate's barrier, and Ikkyu quickly seized the opportunity to regain the initiative, firing satellite-based projectiles at Fate. While Fate attempted to block them, Kuro and Kiri charged in. Kuro was stopped, leaving Kiri to rush forward in an attempt to transport Fate away along with Tauda and Karin. However, Kiri was petrified in an instant, causing the plan to fail. As they considered retreating, Fate revealed that he needed 5 minutes to recover his barrier, giving Tauda a chance to capture him. Seizing the opportunity, Tauda stepped forward to engage in battle. Meanwhile, Karin encountered an old priest named Shaba. Kuro faced off against the swordsman from before, named Asura, and the maid fighting Ikkyu was called Iwai. All of them were members of Fate's organization, the Silver Wing. Kiro quickly noticed that Asura was a Martian with 6 arms, while EY, like EQ, was also a machine but had far more combat experience. Karin, at that moment, discovered a number marked on Kiri's hand. Meanwhile, Tauta attempted to use footwork techniques to attack Fate, but Fate effortlessly deflected him. He then closed in and unleashed a rain of blades upon Tauta. Though Tauta survived, Fate remarked that Tauta's grandfather had been able to dodge that same attack without a scratch when he was only 10 years old. Tauta, however, felt that Fate was oddly obsessed with his grandfather. He then charged in to attack, and Fate was surprised at how proficient Tauta had already become with gravity-based swordsmanship. Tauta managed to land a strike on Fate, forcing him to retreat and prepare a magic spell. Karin informed Tauta about the number on Kiri's hand, leading him to realize that Kiri had a plan. He instructed everyone to regroup when the number reached 0. Tauta then taunted Fate, claiming he was too afraid to engage in close combat. Enraged, Fate immediately lunged at him and grabbed hold of him. However, Tauta increased the weight of his sword, dragging both of them down toward Karin's position. Just then, the countdown reached 0, and Kiri instantly reversed time, transporting everyone back. Fate found himself trapped inside the cave, where he was confronted by Yuki. She only wanted to talk, but Fate asserted that their ties had been severed 20 years ago. Though they were both willing to fight, it would ultimately be meaningless, as both were immortal. Instead, Fate proposed that he would answer one question from each of them in exchange for his release. He claimed to possess knowledge of everything in the world, and they could ask him anything. Tauta had many questions, but was unsure which one to ask first, so EQ went first. What did Fate need Tauta for? Fate revealed that he needed Tauta in order to save his grandfather. Tauta, who had believed his grandfather was dead, was shocked to learn that Yuki had been hiding the truth from him. According to Fate, rescuing Tauta's grandfather would also save 12 billion people in the solar system. Karin then asked the next question: whom did Tauta's grandfather treasure more, Fate or Yuki? Fate replied that Tauta's grandfather had cherished many people, while Yuki had only ever loved Tauta's great-grandfather. He refused to elaborate further. Next, Kiro asked whether Fate's need for Tauta was an urgent matter. Fate responded that the task could wait another 20 years if necessary. Finally, it was Tauta's turn. He asked whether Fate was the one who had killed his parents. Fate admitted that he was. Enraged, Tauta prepared to fight him then and there. However, at that moment, an image of Tauta's grandfather, Negi, appeared through the mark on Tauta's body. Negi confirmed that he was still alive and had much to tell Tauta. Suddenly, Yuki instructed Kiro to find the communication device and destroy it. Negi then informed Tauta that Fate had lied about the crisis threatening the entire solar system. Although Fate genuinely wished to help Tauta, Negi wanted him to know the real truth. However, before he could say anything further, Kiro severed the communication link. At this point, Fate understood that now was not the right time to fight, while Tauta still could not grasp what his grandfather was trying to convey to him. Kiri was quite frustrated that they had gone through the trouble of capturing Fate, only for Yuki to let him go. To make matters worse, when Tauta's grandfather appeared, she was the only one who wasn't present. Karin noticed that Kiri seemed to have feelings for Tauta, which was why she regretted missing such an important moment. Meanwhile, Tauta tried asking Yuki about what was going on, but she kept evading the topic, unwilling to let him know everything just yet. Suddenly, a noblewoman arrived at their base, requesting a meeting with both Tauta and Yuki. Later, while Tauta was training, he accidentally slashed open several garbage bags that Shinobu was carrying to throw away. The two then sat down and had a pleasant conversation, leaving Kiri and Kiro unsure about the nature of their relationship. Shortly after, the noblewoman's granddaughter, Mizore, suddenly appeared and demanded that all the girls stay away from Tauta. She claimed that Tauta carried the bloodline of a womanizer. His great-grandfather had a massive harem with countless women, while his grandfather, as a lecturer, had seduced over 30 of his own students. Mizore's grandmother was one of the women who had cried because of Tauta's grandfather. Mizore saw Tauda as the enemy of all women and was determined to deal with him. Tauda tried to insist that he wasn't popular with girls at all, but Mizore refused to listen and immediately attacked him. In the ensuing scuffle, Tauda accidentally threw Mizore away and had to chase after her to catch her. This act changed Mizore's impression of Tauda. She then decided to acknowledge him and declared that she would protect the girls there from him by claiming him as her own right then and there. She proclaimed Tauda as her fiancé. However, Tauda immediately rejected her, saying that he didn't even know her. Meanwhile, Mizore's grandmother was meeting with Yuki to reminisce about the past when they had been classmates, learning under Tauda's grandfather. Skipping this part, Mizore later brought lunch for Tauda, even borrowing Shinobu's maid outfit to wear. Kiri and the other girls began to notice that Mizore was making moves to win Tauda's affection, using food as a rather strategic approach. Mizore presented a full banquet for Tauda and Shinobu. Kiri assumed that Mizore had merely asked her servants to prepare the meal, but noticing Mizore's injured hands, it was clear that she had made the food herself. Karin became certain that Kiri was in love, while also realizing that human girls seemed to have a natural talent for winning affection. Immortal beings like them seemed to lack something in comparison. If human girls were like real flowers, then they were merely artificial ones, everlasting but ultimately fake. Ikkyu then appeared with a solution. Men and women should bathe together and scrub each other's backs to deepen their bonds. After all, anything could happen once inside a bathhouse. He then decided to pay Tauda a visit. Meanwhile, Mizore's grandmother continued her conversation with Yuki, learning that Negi had reappeared. It was revealed that Tauda's grandfather was being held captive by someone at the top of the tower and could only speak when that person allowed it. Mizore's grandmother then brought up the topic of Tauda, believing that one day he would have to leave on his own journey. She knew that Yuki feared that moment, but she would eventually have to accept it. That was the courage that Negi had once taught them. Meanwhile, Tauda was in the bath, where he learned a few things from Ikkyu. Ikkyu revealed that his real body was lying in a hospital bed and that he had been living in his mechanical body for 85 years. However, thanks to meeting Yuki, he was able to join the organization and experience an interesting life. Just then, Karin entered, surprised to find the place relatively empty. She decided to try the back scrubbing technique that Ikkyu had mentioned, using a broom to scrub Tauda's back. Kiri rushed in and stopped Karin, pointing out that she had said she wouldn't take part in this. However, as the two were momentarily distracted, Shinobu seized the opportunity, only for Mizore to swiftly charge in and kick Shinobu away. The two blonde girls then rushed in, trying to scrub Tauda's back, but Kuro pulled him up onto the rooftop and told him to run away. Karin chose to give up, while the others continued chasing him. Tauda then fell into Yuki's place, and she ended up taking the opportunity to scrub his back away from the other girls. When Tauda asked why she had been avoiding him, she said she had just been feeling a little unwell at the time. After Yuki finished scrubbing his back, nothing happened, leading Ikkyu to believe that it was because they already cared about each other, which was why there was no particular reaction. Later, Mizore and Shinobu apologized to each other for their earlier excessive behavior. Mizore understood Shinobu's feelings since both of them were ordinary humans, but that did not mean Mizore was willing to give up Tauda to Shinobu. In response, Shinobu decided to compete with Mizore for Tauda at all costs. Meanwhile, Tauda went to see Yuki, who had something to discuss with him, but she chose to speak in her true form. Before she could begin, Tauda asked if she had ever loved his grandfather, to which she admitted that she still did. However, the person who had appeared before Tauda that day was not the Negi she loved. 20 years ago, his grandfather had defeated the mage of the beginning, but she had possessed and parasitized Negi's body. It was only a matter of time before Negi was completely taken over, which was why Yuki did not believe the words he had spoken that day. Both she and Fate wished to save Negi, but their opposing methods led them to part ways. As for the statement Negi had made about Tauda not trusting Fate, it was referring to the fact that Fate had never actually killed Tauda's parents. More precisely, the people who had died in the past accident were not entirely his biological parents, they had only raised him. Tauta was actually a clone created from Negi. Tauta later recounted this to Kiro, feeling somewhat disappointed that he had no real memories or past of his own. Just then, Mizore rushed in and called for Tauta to depart. The place he was heading to was a martial arts tournament. Meanwhile, both Mizore's grandmother and Yuki were unsure whether they had made the right decision in telling Tauta everything. Tauta was overwhelmed by the sheer number of participants at the tournament. Mizore explained that various martial arts and magic techniques would be used, and more importantly, the final match would be held at the top of the orbital elevator. There would be a preliminary round, and those who passed would move on to the main event. Both mortals and immortals were allowed to participate. Tauta then wanted to register, but unfortunately, all spots were already filled. He was told that if any contestant dropped out suddenly, they would notify him. With no other choice, Tauta decided to wait until next year to participate instead. Later, Mizore's grandmother arrived with another person, Mana, the headmistress of the academy where the tournament was being held, which was also where Negi had once taught. Both she and Mizore's grandmother had been students of Negi. Mizore's grandmother then wanted to speak privately with Tauta and asked Mizore to leave for a moment. Meanwhile, Shinobu, feeling bored at home, discovered that Yuki and Karin were also heading to the capital, so she decided to tag along. At the same time, Tauta was led to the classroom where his grandfather once taught, and met another of Negi's former students, Seo, a ghost, who was quite surprised to meet Tauta. Meanwhile, Kiro and Kiri ran into Mizore and asked where Tauta was. They suspected that Mizore had secretly done something to him. But Mizore was now more worried that her grandmother might have done something instead. Mizore's grandmother observed that Tauta still bore some resemblance to Negi, but he lamented that he was merely a clone. However, she reassured him that it did not matter, he was still truly Negi's grandson. She then embraced Tauta, feeling as if she had become young again. Right after, Mana received news that a contestant had been injured, meaning a slot had opened up, so Tauta was quickly given a place in the tournament. Tauta was then rushed into the arena, while Kiro, Kiri, and Mizore had already taken their seats in the audience to cheer for him. His opponent was a mysterious figure wearing a cloak. As Tauta faced him, something about the opponent felt strangely familiar, and he immediately charged in to attack. Mizore's family noticed something odd about Tauta's opponent, and Kiro also realized that something was off. This person was exuding a murderous aura. At this moment, someone in the infirmary recognized that the cloaked figure was the one who had attacked them to steal their place in the match, meaning this fight had been rigged. The cloaked opponent kept calling Tauta Big Brother. Tauta dodged a magic attack from the enemy and counterattacked at an opening, but the opponent managed to block it and retaliated with magic. Tauta was struck down, and then the opponent used magic while calling him a cheap replica, immediately rushing in and slashing him, cutting Tauta in half. Kiro wanted to intervene, but the arena was surrounded by a barrier. Tauta then activated black magic to fight, but the opponent pulled out another sword, restrained him, and unleashed a barrage of dark spears to pin him to the ground. The opponent revealed that these two swords were designed to repel all types of magic, including Tauta's black magic. He considered Tauta to be nothing more than a clone, but unlike him, Tauta was just a defective product, destined to remain a mere monster. Encouraged by his friends in the stands, Tauta disregarded the so-called truth the opponent was spouting and rose up again. He then realized that his opponent was female. Suddenly, another figure appeared. Kiro recognized him as Tauta's grandfather, Negi, but Mana noticed that this was not the Negi they knew. It was the mage of the beginning. She attempted to deceive Tauta into following her to the top of the tower, but Tauta refused. Just then, Yuki arrived, casting a powerful spell onto the arena to aid Tauta. She confronted the mage of the beginning, exposing her true identity. But two more individuals suddenly appeared and restrained Yuki. They were former students of Negi. Another sword-wielding figure also charged in, only to be blocked by Karin and Kiro. Kiri then returned Tauta's sword to him, and now both sides were evenly matched in numbers. The mage of the beginning wanted to know if Yuki's side was prepared to fight, but Tauta was more than ready. Yuki revealed that the 3 people on the other side were already dead, and that she had no idea how the mage of the beginning had turned them into her subordinates. She didn't want to fight them because they were once acquaintances. Suddenly, the mage of the beginning sneezed, causing everyone's clothes to be blown away. Tauta was astonished that someone could possess such a shameless ability. However, this was a condition that Negi had once suffered from, and it still persisted to this day, serving as proof of the power within Negi's body. At that moment, Shinobu arrived and wondered why there was a black hole in the sky. Kiri then called for a ceasefire, suggesting that the mage of the beginning try persuading Tauta instead. However, someone on the other side could read minds, exposing Kiri's intentions. Even so, they agreed to use words instead of violence. Their reasoning was that Tauta was the only successful experiment combining Negi's genes with those of someone named Asuna. But before anything more could happen, another figure suddenly appeared and created a black hole, sucking Tauta away. He was transported into a separate space where he encountered someone who called himself Sandal. Noboru warned him that this was the person who had created him and told him not to be deceived, as Sandal was the only one who had ever rendered Yuki powerless. Noboru was immediately punished by Sandal, who revealed that he was currently siding with the mage of the beginning and wished to persuade Tauta. Sandal then showed Tauta a glimpse of Yuki's past. She had once been saved by his great-grandfather, Nagi, and from then on, she followed Nagi, determined to make him hers. Tauta was then shown the academy where Yuki met Negi 15 years later. Because Negi wanted to become stronger, Yuki sought to make him her subordinate. That was when Asuna appeared. Negi later became Yuki's disciple and began developing his power, something that could be seen in the prequel. Sandal then showed Tauta Yuki's happy smile when she realized that she had shifted her feelings onto Negi. She had come to view mentoring Negi as a contract, with Negi's affection being the price to pay for that contract. Tauta thanked Sandal for showing him these past events, but Sandal revealed that this was not the past. Yuki then suddenly recognized Tauta, only to be immediately seized by the mage of the beginning. Tauta was also impaled multiple times by Sandal's spears, pinning him to the ground, while Yuki was torn apart by the mage of the beginning. Tauta reached out to Yuki, but the mage of the beginning declared that Yuki would never find happiness unless Tauta agreed to follow her. The two managed to touch hands, and Tauta decided that he would protect Yuki. Yuki then expressed her deep desire to stay by Tauta's side forever, and her words made him recall the day she had saved him. Tauta ultimately decided that it didn't matter whom Yuki had loved in the past. What mattered was that he was the one standing beside her now, and he would walk with her toward a peaceful and happy future together. However, the mage of the beginning knew that Yuki had realized her own sins and understood that she would never attain happiness. But Tauta didn't care. Her happiness was not for the mage of the beginning to decide. Wanting to test what Tauta was capable of, she launched an attack. Yuki regained her composure and revealed that this was an illusory space created by the mage of the beginning. If they could defeat her here, they would win. Yuki then created a barrier for both herself and Tauta, ensuring that they would not be affected by the laws of this space. As soon as they charged forward, the mage of the beginning used the faces of Nagi and Negi to tempt Yuki. She was quickly caught and thrown toward Tauta. He called her a flirt, but she defended herself, saying she had only loved 3 people in 700 years, which was extremely faithful by any standard. She then launched a massive attack at the mage of the beginning, but it was completely shattered. Tauta attempted to charge in, but a replica of Negi appeared and sent him flying with a punch. He then noticed the girls around him trying to drag him down. Just then, someone named Asuna appeared and broke the mage of the beginning's illusionary space. She revealed herself as Tauta's grandmother. Asuna then realized that she had also managed to save Yuki. Yuki was shocked, as Asuna was supposed to have sacrificed herself on Mars, yet she was here. She recalled that part of Asuna existed within Tauta, which could explain the situation. The other girls also escaped from the illusion and urged Tauta to forget what had just happened, as it had all been a mere hallucination. Asuna then informed Tauta that, in reality, not even a second had passed outside. When she destroyed this space, the real battle would resume outside, so she told them to be prepared. She then provided Tauta's group with a strategy to secure victory. However, the mage of the beginning regained control of the space, forcing Asuna to create a barrier to buy some time so that Tauta could understand that the key to victory lay in his own power. He just needed to hold on until it awakened. After delivering her message, Asuna shattered the barrier by striking down the mage of the beginning. The group quickly returned to battle, first confronting the swordsman. Kiri aimed for his eyes and attacked, allowing Karin to land a powerful strike using holy magic. Meanwhile, Kuro split into multiple copies to attack the two mind readers. Though he was captured, they couldn't dodge attacks from all directions and were ultimately restrained. As for the cloaked girl, Tauta distracted her while Yuki froze her in place. Tauta then charged straight at the mage of the beginning, but she dodged his strike and counterattacked. No matter what she said, Tauta refused to follow her. The group now had to buy Tauta just 30 more seconds. The swordsman began to adapt to Karin's attacks and started resisting her holy magic, while Kuro's binding spell started cracking and losing its effect. At that moment, Yuki and Fate came to support Tauta. They extracted all the separated souls, allowing Tauta to finally speak with Negi. Negi was surprised to see everyone again, including Tauta. Fate believed he had a way to save Negi by using Tauta to grant immortality to all of humanity, thereby erasing the pain of death forever. However, Negi argued that no matter what Fate wished to do for humanity, they still had to destroy him, as he had already been completely taken over by the mage of the beginning. But Fate refused to accept this. Everything he had done was for the sake of saving Negi. Negi stated that there was no more time left and wanted to leave some final words for Tauta. However, Tauta insisted that he use that time to speak with Yuki instead. Negi then apologized to Yuki for failing to save his father, Nagi. He also acknowledged that Yuki would have to continue living on and entrusted the future to Tauta. Their connection was then severed, and they were brought back to the battlefield. Fate and Yuki quickly restrained the mage of the beginning, but she transformed into another form and overpowered them instead. As soon as Tauta took a hit, he immediately entered a form similar to Negi's. The two of them left the battlefield, while Kuro's binding spell was nullified, and he was counterattacked by the duo he had been fighting. Karin, too, had the situation turned against her by the swordsman from earlier, and now she was the one taking hits. Tauta attempted to run to buy more time, but the mage of the beginning relentlessly pursued him and hurled him into the tower. Tauta didn't know what kind of hero Negi had once been, but his current display didn't resemble that of someone who would stand up to protect the weak. However, before he could act, Negi shot him with a type of lightning blast. Despite this, Tauta still pushed forward in an attempt to attack the mage of the beginning, but he was intercepted by the swordsman, who stabbed him and sent him crashing back onto the battlefield. By this point, all of Tauta's friends had been defeated, and just as he was about to be struck down, Kiri rushed in to block the attack. The mage of the beginning halted her strike, recognizing Kiri's ability. However, they exploited Kiri's emotions to distract her, allowing them to stab her. The mage of the beginning deliberately avoided a fatal wound to keep Kiri alive. The cloaked woman, knowing Kiri had a backup plan, forcibly broke her teeth to extract the poison hidden inside. Tauta was furious, but Kiri only smiled because they had bought enough time. The mage of the beginning was then transported back to the past, where she stood before all of Negi's former students. One by one, they launched attacks against her, but most of them were too weak and were blocked with ease. The mage of the beginning then got serious and took to the air, attempting to erase them completely. However, some among them were able to intercept her attacks. They managed to weaken her and then used a technique to stimulate Negi's consciousness from within her. They revealed that Tauta had been created from the genes of all of them and Negi, not just Asuna. Asuna then appeared and attempted to help Negi awaken. but the mage of the beginning still maintained too strong a grip on him. However, this time, she chose to withdraw. Asuna believed that one day, Tauta would be the key to fully freeing Negi. The mage of the beginning then promised to meet Tauta again at the top of the tower and departed with her subordinates. Tauta then wondered about the people in the audience stands, but it turned out that Jinbei and Jingoro had saved them, with Shinobu and Ikkyu also assisting. Fate then declared that he would find a way to save Negi himself next time and warned Yuki not to interfere. Not long after, upon returning to their base, Kiri was feeling quite down, frustrated that she had foolishly blurted out that her feelings for Tauta were merely a means to buy time and that he had believed it completely. Meanwhile, Tauta suddenly ran into Yuki's room and declared that he liked her very much. He reaffirmed his promise to always stay by her side so that she would never leave again. However, Yuki rejected him, saying that he didn't need to worry about such things. Karen, witnessing Tauta's boldness in confessing to Yuki right in front of her, chased after him to give him a beating. Yuki, on the other hand, simply thought that it was still too soon for Tauta to be saying things like that. And with that, this part of the story came to an end.